Colin Cowherd has had quite the week for himself, and he continues by saying that TCU is going to blow out Colorado. I'm going to talk about why he's wrong on today's episode of Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about Colin Cowherd's bold prediction for week one between Colorado and TCU. We're going to be talking about Colorado being ranked number 20, according to RJ Young of Fox Sports in his preseason poll. And then we're going to be talking about the Pac-12's largest fumble that honestly, had they not fumbled this bag, none of this realignment stuff would have happened. Colorado would still be in the Pac-12, Utah, Oregon, Washington, maybe USC, UCLA. The whole crew could have been there, but hey, this is where we're at, and the Pac-12 fumbled the bags. But without further ado, this episode of Locked On Buffs, just like every episode, we're here every day. We're free, and it's going to be free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Tune in. We're here every single day, your team every single day right here. Okay. Colin Cowherd, Fox Sports. I believe the show is called The Herd. It's every day at noon Pacific time, I believe, is when it starts, or something around there. Either way, doesn't matter. He had quite the week. It started his week off with talking about quarterbacks that he doesn't think could win the Super Bowl, and not sure if it was an error by a production assistant or a graphics person, and then the producers for sure on their part. But it was quarterbacks since 2013 that can't win a Super Bowl. So it had names like Paxton Lynch, Johnny Manziel, EJ Manuel. Sure, obviously none of them are in the league, so that makes sense. But then obviously he went and pointed out Dwayne Haskins, who sadly passed away in an accident this past year and has caught a lot of flack for that. And so I think obviously either we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he's just not that dialed into football, I guess you could say. I don't know. Either way, Colin has had a rough week, and I think he continued recently by kind of jumping on the foregone conclusion bandwagon that is the TCU Colorado game. I feel like a lot of people are viewing this game like it's a blowout in favor of TCU, when realistically, I just don't see how. And which I'm gonna have someone on to talk about TCU coming up pretty soon. I just don't see how it is going to be that big of a difference between the two teams. TCU lost their quarterback, 3 running backs, the receivers. They lost their 2 guys that contributed to 60% of their sacks. Like, it is not the same TCU team. And realistically, and this isn't a knock on Sonny Dykes, but he hasn't shown throughout his past tenure that he could continuously coach at this level. Like, was it a fluke? I don't know. I'm not gonna say it was a fluke, because they put everything together and it worked out really well. But let me just go over Sonny Dykes' records over these past few years. So we'll just start when he was at Cal. 1-11, 5-7, 8-5, 5-7. Was fired. SMU. He went 5-7, 10-3, 7-3, 8-4. And then all of a sudden jumped to TCU, went 13-2, which, I mean, great year for them. Has 1 career bowl game win, 2 games now, 2 bowl games. He has never once won double digits and then followed it up with a double-digit win season, which he's only won double digits on 2 separate occasions. The first time he did it at SMU, they won 10 games the following year during the COVID year, nonetheless. But I'm just saying, the TCU's lost a lot. Colorado's gained a lot. Colorado realistically has, I think, a better quarterback. I think they have better receivers. Secondary should be better. I'll give TCU the edge on both sides of the trenches. But either way, I don't think it's a 3-score game like you said. I just don't see it. I think TCU, we saw it last year. Excuse me. We saw it last year when they played in that first game with Chandler Morris at quarterback, and it's going to be him again this year. They just were not moving the ball. Obviously, he'll have more experience, but he has less weapons around him. So more experience with not as good weapons as last year. I don't see how that translates to a 20-point win, or a 3-score win, whatever Colin said for TCU. Colorado, I believe, is going to. They also have the element of surprise. I think people forget that. I think studying for Colorado week 1 will be the hardest task of TCU season, because obviously you're watching Kent State games. Okay, then you're watching Alabama defenses. For Sean Lewis's offense, you're watching Kent State. For defense, you're watching Alabama. Okay, well, none of those players are obviously on the Colorado team except for like Demore Kennedy and a couple other like Jaquez Robinson. But how do you game plan for Colorado's offense? Like, you have to watch individual film for just about all of these guys and see what they bring to the table. I think that's going to be a difficult element. And I think Colorado's kind of working with this underdog mentality. It's us against the world mentality. And Coach Prime has the swagger and the confidence in his program that they're going to win. And I don't think it's realistic to think that Colorado's not going to at least keep this game close if they do lose. I just don't think that's realistic. I think Colorado has a much better roster. TCU, I think they're a program headed in the right direction. They obviously were able to build off of last year with a great recruiting class, but 3 scores and you're changing that much. I would take Colorado to cover if I was a betting man, and honestly, I think they could win the game. I think when people think about this week 1 matchup against TCU, they automatically go back to the last year, whereas Colorado, with I think it was Brendan Lewis at the time starting at quarterback, and then whatever happened after that, who knows? But I think they just go back to that. They're like, oh, they won 1 game last season. TCU made it all the way to the playoff, and it's like that's comparing apples to oranges at this point. Like, these are so 2 different teams. 10 scholarship players from Colorado returned last year. TCU lost pretty much their entire offense. Defensively, they weren't that good last year. They had good athletes and good players, but defensively they weren't that good. I don't think. Like, they were obviously shredded by Georgia. But here's where they ranked in total defense last season. Let me find them. TCU control. I don't even think they were a top 100 defense. Let's see. Okay, they were higher than I thought, but still not nearly as good as people are giving them credit for. It's quite interesting to see that the respect that TCU's been given after 1 season, because we've seen teams make it to the playoff. For example, Washington, and obviously they've had TCU ranked 95th in total defense last year. There it is. They ranked 95th in total defense last year, and that defense, sure, they returned some guys, they added some guys. That's a defense that's going to get Colorado. Offensively, they lost so many people, and this is a team that's going to blow Colorado out by 20, a completely improved Colorado roster. I doubt it. I'm not buying that for a second. Like I said, if I were a betting man, which I'm not, because I live in California, I would definitely not be counting on TCU to just hit the ground, run, and pick up where they left off against Michigan and just blow the doors off. Unless Chandler Morris is like, because last season, and I will give Chandler Morris these props, he was raved about following fall camp last year. Like, Max Duggan was a 3-year starter, had all the experience in the world. People were comparing him to Sam Ehlinger, the Texas quarterback, and Chandler Morris beat him out fair and square for the job. They were much more high on what he could do, and he ended up winning the job, starting the game, got injured, but either way, he wasn't doing much, and then Max kind of took over and ran with the job. But you're telling me that that's the guy that's going to shred this Colorado defense? I think the only thing that could hurt Colorado, and I've said this and I'll say it again, the trenches. If Shadur's not getting the protection he needs, that's going to hurt. And I think if the defense line can't get pressure on Chandler, they're going to make him look good. But hey, if you still want to throw down some money on the game, FanDuel has TCU as 20.5-point favorite, so go check that out. Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting matchup, to say the least. By the way, before we move on, this episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by none other than eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part fits right. And the first time around, just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that a part will fit or you get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop on eBay Motors and with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So you can get your right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay, guaranteed fit only, available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. How to get that sip of water. And ever since Spencer McLaughlin told me about his second segment sip, I've kind of trying to follow suit just to keep the vocal cords ready. Okay. So we talked about someone doubting Colorado. Let's talk about someone who believes in Colorado, and he's been very consistent in his belief in the Buffs this whole entire process. Mostly because I think he's well aware of what uh, Coach Prime could do. RJ Young of Fox Sports recently released, as most people are. I know us here at Locked On released our preseason top 25. Colorado did not make it, unfortunately, for them, for the Locked On. But for RJ Young of Fox Sports, Colorado made it, and they made it higher than I think most people expected. I think he caught a lot of flack for this, but they came in. Let me read this to you. They came in at number 20. So they were ranked ahead of teams like, and let me just go down here, South Carolina, Oregon State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and Iowa, and ranked behind teams like Notre Dame, UCLA, Kansas State, Wisconsin. TCU also ranked above them. What does this ranking show? I think, for one, it shows that RJ is definitely bought in to the Coach Prime experience, Coach Prime hype. I can't blame him. I think Coach Prime is kind of on the fast track to turning around a program, and as quick as you can, really. I don't think there's going to be a quicker turnaround for a program that was in worse shape. I talked about it probably a few weeks ago about all the programs that had gone from 1-11 to or 0-12 to improved record the next season. There's not many. There's really not. But if anyone were to do it, it'd be Coach Prime. I think he has the charisma, the savvy. Obviously, he's one of the greatest football players ever. So that helps. Not to mention, his staff around him is full of guys with head coaching experience, guys with championship experience, like guys that have been a part of championship staffs. This is the perfect recipe. If someone made me pick a team this year that was going to go from sub 500 to a bowl game or better, I would probably mention Colorado. Just because of everything that's working in their favor. It's not like they went from 1-11, hired a young up-and-coming coach who used the portal a little bit, brought in, say, 10, 15 guys, and then he still has the roster from last year. No. Coach Prime's got a whole new roster, and it's gonna be looking a little different. I'm telling you right now. He's got transfers everywhere, upgrades everywhere, and not to mention a better staff than this program has ever seen, for being realistic. So I thought that was interesting to point out. I think RJ Young is clearly buying into the Coach Prime. I won't say it's an experiment, but I think his roster construction is an experiment. But I thought that was interesting. I also think it's interesting. Colorado's schedule. They have quite the difficult one. They play 6 teams, or according to RJ's top 25, 6 teams that are ranked. So they have obviously number 15 TCU. They play number 13 Oregon, number 4 USC, number 17 UCLA, number 22 Oregon State, and then number 9, which is Utah. So they have all the best schools in the Pac-12, and they're going to have to take advantage of the games against like Stanford, Washington State, Arizona State, which we knew that. We knew that going in, that they would have a difficult schedule and that they'd have to take advantage of the more winnable games. But I think, and this isn't a bold prediction because I've been talking about this entire time my entire time of hosting Locked On Buffs, Colorado is going to catch someone by surprise. It's going to be a very big win for them and a huge loss for whatever program it may be. And I'm telling you, if Colorado is able to pull off an upset against a ranked team, especially early in the season, like say they beat TCU, who's probably going to be a top 25 team, Colorado's going to ascend into the top 25. And then if they beat Nebraska, that's going to cause more hype. Then they got Colorado State. They could head into, I think a lot of people like to talk about, heading into week 4 against Oregon, they could be 1-2. Yeah, well, they could also be 3-0 as a top, say, 20 team in the country, and the buzz would be through the roof. I'm telling you. So look out for Colorado. I think it's still easy to doubt them just because it's like, oh, they were so bad last year. But again, now I've said this multiple times. I think people are holding last year's struggles against Coach Prime as if he has anything to do with that team, their lack of success, their coaches, nothing to do with it. New roster, new regime, new vibes, new energy, new fans. Colorado's just a different program. You may as well have planted Colorado in a different state and a different place because it is a brand new program with brand new excitement, brand new everything. Not to say that Colorado fans aren't supportive, but there's new fans now that Coach Prime's there. So yeah, I definitely think that Colorado is going to be. I think bold prediction here. Bold prediction time. I think Colorado is going to be ranked at one point during the season. I think it could be early in the season. Obviously, I think that'd be their best time to do it. They have the schedule, they have everything working in their favor in terms of if they were to beat these teams, and so gotta look out for that. When we come back, we're gonna be talking about how the Pac-12 fumbled their bag so hard that it actually led to the destruction of their own conference. When we get back. Welcome back. We're talking about how the Pac-12 fumbled the bag so hard that their conference is now ceasing to exist. Okay. John Canzano, who's been on the show multiple times, talked about expansion and realignment and the Pac-12 media rights deal when those things were thought to be happening, which we learned over the past week or so from John Arendt from Sports Business Journal or New York Post, one of the two. I think it's Sports Business Journal. Pac-12 had offers. They turned them down. This one, though, is basically what led to everything. So in the fall of 2022, and this is John Canzano reported and other people picked up on it too, the Pac-12 got an offer of $30 million per school from ESPN. And it included all the conference's media rights, the Pac-12 network, but the presidents and chancellors thought they could do way better. So they told George Kliavkoff to reject ESPN's proposal and make a counteroffer. Obviously, I think the counteroffer, I think maybe they were watching too much Pawn Stars. I think most of my negotiating skills, like I sold a car recently, and I knew it was valued at like $8,500. But you know how people are when you're negotiating. You start off as high as you want or as high as you hope, and then they instantly like try to cut it in half or something. So I sold my truck. I put it down for 10. I put it listed for 10. Worked my way down. When I did the Kelly Blue Book and all that, it was valued around 8,000, 7,500. I got it for 7,000. I got it sold for 7,500. So I listed for 10. Worked my way to where I wanted to be eventually. I think the Pac-12 they did that times 10. They did it way too extreme. So like I said, offered $30 million. This is what Canzano's source told him. You know what we told ESPN after the $30 million per school offer? And then he goes, what? We said we wanted $50 million per school. And then Canzano asked, what was ESPN's response? Goodbye. Yeah. I think realistically, the Pac-12 probably should have came in at like a firm 40, 38, 37. I don't know. I think the ACC, let's see who the ESPN has a deal with is, let's see, they get paid, yeah, 39 million. So, which I feel like in the eyes of many, the ACC is probably considered a better conference than the Pac-12, like these past years. So the ACC was getting 39 million, which the ESPN has them under contract till 2036. The Big 12 ended up getting 31 million, 0.6 from ESPN, and the Pac-12 thought they were going to get 50, which is like Big 10 range, which honestly, because the Pac-12 at one point was the richest conference, or had the best media rights deal. They had more money than the Big 10, SEC, when Larry Scott was in office. And they did the Pac-12 network thing, and they fumbled that bag tremendously. But had they been like thriving, maybe the conference saw a playoff team every year, maybe. But the conference hasn't seen a playoff team since 2017, I think it is, when it was Washington. And obviously ESPN was not looking to dish out that much money. So they essentially shot themselves in the foot moving forward. And now the Pac-12 is left with Stanford, Cal, Oregon State, and Washington State, all of which are looking to leave. They all no minimal to no interest in staying in the conference that appears to be, it's going to be like a historical, like, hey, I'm going to tell my kids one day, there was this conference. It was out west. Believe it or not, I actually used to work for them. It was schools that were only on the West Coast. So it was like Oregon, Washington, USC, Stanford, Cal, like Arizona was the furthest east to win, or Oregon State or something like that. Like that's going to be a fable. The Pac-12 did that to themselves. As we know, Colorado's now headed up to the Big 12, which we talked about multiple times, and we will continue to talk about as the season moves on, just because it's going to be such a big storyline. But yeah, Pac-12 fumbled the bag. They kind of rushed their own extinction, if you will, and they did it by just being a little too flamboyant with what they thought they could get. That's what. Don't be flamboyant. Don't be overly confident. It's what it gets you. But hey, that's not our problem. Colorado Buffs fans call me Big 12 Borba. We're headed to the Big 12. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, liking, subscribing, and following along for this journey. We have a lot of guests next week. Hoping to have a guest every single day talking about the Nebraska game, TCU game, Oregon, Utah. We're going to be talking about it all. You guys won't want to miss out. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs and making it your first listen every single day. And we're free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to subscribe and follow along. I'm Kevin Borba. Thank you guys.